I was never the guy who believed in fate. I was a logistics manager, a planner by nature. Everything in my life, from the military to my post-army job at a shipping depot in Fort Collins, had been mapped out, step by step. That is, until I met Rachel. Rachel was the unexpected. The lightning bolt in my spreadsheet. I met her during a corporate fire drill. Of all things, she was in HR, helping herd people out of the stairwell in 4-inch heels and a clipboard like she ran the place. She asked me if I had filled out my emergency contact information. I told her not yet. She smiled and said, "Well, I hope I'm not the one they call." Of course, she would be. I was 29, newly out of the service. She was 27, radiant, with a dry wit and this ability to make a room feel warmer by just existing in it. She was divorced, had been for 2 years. Said her ex-husband cheated on her with someone from his softball league. I remember that because she said it like it was a punchline she'd worn out telling. We moved in together a year later. And now, I have to tell you something else, something that colors every inch of this story like a stain under fresh paint. My younger brother Caleb had been diagnosed with a rare kidney disease a few years before Rachel came into my life. We were close, he was my only sibling, but the illness had made things complicated. He wasn't bitter, just scared. And I was the only viable match in our family. Caleb and I had gone back and forth about the transplant for years. He didn't want to take my kidney. He told me he didn't want to feel like he was robbing me of something, even if I didn't need both. I kept saying, "It's just an organ, man. You're my brother." But we always danced around it. Rachel was the one who finally pushed me. "Just do it," she said one night. "You've been putting it off for 2 years. You can save his life. What are you waiting for?" So, I did it. We got the surgery scheduled. Caleb cried when I told him. Full-on tears. We had the procedure in the spring of 2019. He was in recovery for a long time, and so was I. Rachel took care of both of us. She made bone broth from scratch. Bought essential oils and filled the apartment with the smell of peppermint and eucalyptus. Called herself Florence Nightingale with Wi-Fi. I thought I had everything. It would take me another 4 years to realize I had less than nothing. It's funny, looking back, how betrayal never feels like an explosion in the moment. It's more like a crack in the foundation. Hairline. Barely noticeable at first. But if you ignore it, step on it just right, one day, it caves in under you. That first crack came a few months after the transplant. Caleb was healing slowly, still tired all the time. He'd moved back to Denver for work, which meant I didn't see him as often, but we talked. Or, we tried. Sometimes he'd miss my calls. Sometimes he'd answer and sound distracted, like he was thinking about something else the whole time. I chalked it up to recovery, or maybe depression. He'd had a tough go, and I figured it was just his way of coping. Rachel, on the other hand, seemed brighter than ever. It was like the whole process had invigorated her. She kept saying she wanted to live more, experience more. "I don't want to be just an HR drone with a crockpot collection," she joked. She took up photography. Then yoga. Then photography during yoga. I encouraged it all. I didn't see the shift as a warning sign, just a woman evolving after a tough year. But then she started staying out later. Book club, she'd say. Or, Julie's birthday. One night she said she was at a silent meditation retreat, downtown, of all places, and came home smelling like beer. I remember I asked her, "Did you meditate at a bar?" She laughed. We went for drinks after. "God, you sound like my dad." I didn't push. I wanted to be supportive, not possessive. And, hell, I trusted her. That was mistake number 1. The second crack came when I saw a photo she'd taken. It was a candid of a man walking down a street. The composition was good, Rachel had a real eye, but the man in the photo was wearing a leather jacket that looked painfully familiar. I only knew one person who wore it like that, sleeves pushed up, patched elbow. It was Caleb's. When I asked her about it, she shrugged. Oh, yeah, I think Caleb came with me that day. I wanted a walking subject for depth of field. It made sense. She knew Caleb. He was grateful to her for pushing me. They got along. But still, it didn't sit right. Maybe it was how she said it, the casual tone, the flicker in her eyes. Or maybe it was how he started sounding different on the phone. Shorter. Defensive, even. I brushed it off. That was mistake number 2. The third crack came that summer, a night I remember too clearly. We were supposed to go to dinner with some co-workers of hers, a couple she wanted to impress. But an hour before we were supposed to leave, Rachel said she wasn't feeling well. You go without me, she said, bundled under a blanket, sipping tea. I asked if she was sure. She insisted. Said she just needed sleep. I went. I drank. I networked. I told stories about our transplant journey like it was a war we'd fought together. I got home a little after 11. The apartment was quiet. Dark. But our bedroom window was open, something Rachel never did because she said the sounds from the street gave her anxiety. I walked in, and she was asleep. Or pretending to be. The tea mug was gone from the table. Her clothes were folded a little too neatly on the chair. And there was a smell in the room, musky, unfamiliar. I lay next to her, staring at the ceiling, my chest tight with something I couldn't name. It wasn't rage. Not yet. It was dread. Pure, sticky dread. Still, I said nothing. That was mistake number 3. You'd think that after giving a woman the best years of your life, and your own flesh and blood to help your own brother, that maybe she'd owe you a little clarity. But clarity was never Rachel's currency. Charm was. And secrets. By the time fall rolled around, I had a suspicion I couldn't ignore. She was always texting. Always locking her phone. She started sleeping with it under her pillow, like a teenager. And when she'd get a message, she'd flip the phone over before looking at it. I started staying later at work. I needed the space, and truthfully, I think I didn't want to come home. The apartment felt wrong. Like something invisible had crawled in and made a nest in the walls. One Friday, I got a call from Caleb. His voice was thin, even for him. Hey, man, he said. You free this weekend? Yeah. What's up? I need to talk to you. I asked if everything was okay. He paused. Then he said, we'll talk when I see you. That was the last real thing he ever said to me. Because the next day, he didn't show up. No call. No text. I drove to his apartment. The lights were off. His car was gone. I tried not to panic, but something told me he was unraveling. I told Rachel, and she said, he's probably just taking a mental health break. He's been through a lot. She was right. But it didn't feel right. Not anymore. That night, while she was in the shower, I opened her phone. I didn't know the password anymore. She'd changed it. Just like everything else. That was when the crack turned into a chasm. It was a Tuesday morning when I got the call. I was at work, standing near the freight dock, half listening to a temp complain about the vending machine when my phone rang. Unknown number. Normally, I don't answer those. But something, gut instinct, divine whisper, whatever, told me to pick up. Mr. Holloway, a woman's voice asked. This is Mercy General in Denver. Your brother Caleb was brought in this morning. My heart seized. What happened? He was found unresponsive in his apartment. There's no sign of trauma, but his condition is serious. We're running tests. You should come. I drove the hour and a half like I was on autopilot. No music. No thought. Just white noise in my brain and that sick, icy coil of panic winding tighter in my chest with every mile. By the time I reached the hospital, they had already moved Caleb to the ICU. A nurse met me at the front desk. "He's stable," she said. "But he's not waking up. His vitals are okay, but we're concerned about kidney function. His labs are irregular." Kidney function. I felt like the floor tilted under me. "I gave him a kidney," I said, like she didn't understand. The nurse blinked. "Then you know how fragile things can be. There may have been a rejection event. We'll know more soon." Rejection. That word hit me like a slap. I was led to his room. The beeping machines, the wires. He looked smaller than I remembered. Worn thin. Pale. Like all the color had drained from him. I sat next to him and held his hand. "Come on, man," I whispered. "You said you'd fight." And then I saw it. On the windowsill, tucked behind a plastic cup and a cheap bouquet of flowers, was a photo. It was one of those cheap Walgreens prints. And it was of Rachel. Rachel and Caleb. Laughing. Her arm around him. He was mid-laugh, head thrown back, and she was looking at him, not like a sister-in-law. No. She looked at him the way she used to look at me. Before everything turned. I stared at the picture for a long time. Long enough for my ears to start ringing. I stood up and walked out of the room. Straight to the nurse's station. "Has anyone been visiting him?" I asked. The nurse checked the chart. Looks like Rachel Holloway checked in yesterday afternoon." "Again?" She nodded. "She's been by a few times, actually. Said she was his sister-in-law. Stayed a while last week too." I didn't say anything. I just nodded. Inside, I was screaming. That night, I drove back home. I didn't tell Rachel I went to the hospital. I needed to think, to know before I said anything. She was in bed, half watching some baking competition show. She looked up when I came in. "You're home late," she said. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," I said, slipping off my boots. "Just swamped." She yawned. "I made lasagna. It's in the fridge." "Thanks." That was it. I went into the bathroom, locked the door, and stared at myself in the mirror. I didn't recognize the man looking back at me. He looked like a ghost. Tired eyes. Gray at the temples. Skin too thin, jaw too tight. How long had this been going on? When had I lost them both? And the worst part, the part that haunts me even now, is that somewhere in my gut, I already knew. Not the full picture. Not the detail. But I felt it. And I had done nothing. The next morning, I made a decision. I was going to Denver again. But this time, I wasn't going to the hospital. I went to Caleb's apartment. His landlord had dropped off a spare key after I told him who I was. Said the lease was still active, but he hadn't paid the last 2 months. Inside, the place was surprisingly clean. Minimalist. Almost empty. Like someone who knew they wouldn't be there much longer. There wasn't much to go through, some books, bills, a pair of headphones, and a locked drawer in the desk. I almost walked away. But something told me to check. The lock was cheap. I pried it open with a butter knife from the kitchen. Inside were a few folders. Letters. Printed emails. And photos. More photos of Rachel. Some selfies. Some of them together. Some, explicit. I felt my stomach drop. One picture had a date scribbled on the back in Caleb's handwriting. April 15th, after the rain. April 15th. I remember that day. It was the day I came home early from work, only to find Rachel crying in the shower. She said she'd just had a rough day. That she was overwhelmed. I held her for an hour while she wept. Apparently, she'd cried because of him. I sat there for a long time. I don't remember how long. There was a letter, too. Handwritten. The top was folded, but I recognized the ink, the curls and the Y. Rachel's writing. I didn't want to read it. But I did. I don't know how we got here. I don't know if it's right. But when I'm with you, I feel like I exist again. Not as a wife. Not as an obligation. Just, me. I hate that it hurts him. But I don't regret us. I can't. I folded the letter, placed it back in the drawer. Then I went to the kitchen, and I threw up. I didn't go home that night. I sat in my car outside a 24-hour diner and just stared into the dark. There's no rulebook for this. No manual that tells you what to do when the woman you love, the one you gave your brother's second chance to, not only cheated, but did it with him. The one person you sacrificed for. The one person you thought you were saving. I didn't just lose a wife. I didn't just lose a brother. I lost the part of myself that believed love meant anything. I went home the next morning around 6 a.m., just as the sun was bleeding over the rooftops. The city was quiet in that hazy way it only gets before the world wakes up. The sky was pink and gold, like it didn't know how ugly the day was about to become. Rachel was in the kitchen, barefoot in one of my old army t-shirts, sipping coffee like it was any other Thursday. When she turned and saw me, her expression didn't flicker. "Morning," she said, like I'd just come back from the gym. "You disappeared last night." I nodded. "Went to Denver." That stopped her hand. Just a small twitch, barely noticeable, but I caught it. She set the mug down. "You saw Caleb?" I did. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed like she was settling in for a conversation she'd rehearsed. "How is he?" "Unconscious," I said. "They're not sure if it's rejection or something else. His labs are off." A shadow passed over her face, but not sorrow. Guilt. Or fear. She masked it quickly. "I didn't know it was that bad," she said softly. I tilted my head. "But you were there. The nurses said you visited." She blinked. "Just once. Last week." "No," I said. "You were there Monday. Tuesday, too." There was a long silence. A beat of stillness between us. And then she said it. The thing I knew she'd say the moment I stepped into that apartment. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. That's when I knew. Knew. My throat burned. I leaned on the table, pressing my fingers into the wood until they went white. "How long?" I asked. Rachel didn't answer right away. "Don't do that," she said finally. "Don't turn this into math." I slammed my fist on the table. The sound rang out like a gunshot. "How long?" She flinched. And then, quietly. 6 months. My knees almost buckled. 6 months, I repeated. While I was recovering? While he was recovering? She didn't answer. I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "You know what's funny? He never even wanted the kidney. Said it felt like stealing. I pushed him into it. Because of you. You said I was wasting time. That I could save him." Rachel looked away. Her eyes were glassy. "I didn't mean to fall in love with him," she said. I stared at her like she'd grown a second head. "You fell in love with my brother?" She stepped forward. "He saw me. Really saw me. You were always working or zoning out or hiding behind spreadsheets and task lists. I needed someone who... No, I snapped. You don't get to rewrite this. You don't get to burn down the house and say the furniture was already on fire. She went silent. I grabbed my coat and turned to leave. Where are you going? She asked. To talk to the man who should have been my best friend, I said. Because I have one last thing I need to ask him. I drove straight to the hospital. Caleb was still unconscious. The machines beeped around him like a clock counting down. I sat beside him, watching the rise and fall of his chest. I know, I said. I know everything. There was no answer, of course. Just the soft hum of machines. I want to hate you. I do, I said. But I think, part of me already knew. You pulled away months ago. And I let it happen. I didn't ask questions. I didn't want to. I looked down at my hands. Do you know what it feels like to give someone a part of your body? To literally cut into yourself, hand it over, and then watch them use it to sleep with your wife? Tears burned in my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. I'd take it back if I could, I whispered. Not the kidney. The trust. I stood up and placed something on his nightstand, a photo of us from years ago, camping in Estes Park, grinning over a burnt marshmallow. You chose her. And she chose you. But the two of you didn't just break me. You broke us. I turned to leave. Then I paused at the door. If you wake up, I said, not turning around, don't call me. When I got home, Rachel was gone. Not her things. Not yet. Just her. There was a note on the table. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything. But I didn't know how to stay. Or how to leave. That was it. No signature. No promises. No explanations. Just cowardice, written in cursive. That night, I slept in Caleb's old room. Not because I missed him. Not because I forgave him. But because our bed, my bed, was poisoned now. Stained with the echo of lies. I stared at the ceiling and thought about how many times I'd sat across from her at dinner, talked about our future, made jokes, while she was dreaming of his hands. It wasn't just infidelity. It was theft. She took my love, my trust, my sacrifice, and gave it to someone else. And that someone was my own blood. There's this moment after an explosion, not the bang, but the silence right after. The smoke, the ringing in your ears. That eerie stillness before you realize what's missing. That was me in the weeks after Rachel left. Not crying. Not raging. Just numb. I didn't tell anyone at first. Not about her. Not about Caleb. Not about the betrayal that had cracked something so deep in me, I didn't know if it could be welded shut again. I just went through the motions. Work. Gym. Grocery store. Home. Over and over, like a loop I couldn't break. Until one night, my mom called. I was reheating leftover chicken in the microwave when I saw her name flash on the screen. I hadn't spoken to her since before Caleb went into the hospital. I didn't know how to even begin. Hey, sweetheart, she said, her voice thin. You okay? You've been quiet. I cleared my throat. Yeah. Just busy. There was a pause. I heard about Caleb. Rachel told me. I felt the air leave my lungs. She what? She said you were too upset to talk, but that she wanted us to know he was in the hospital. She's been visiting him, she said. Of course she has, I muttered. What's going on, Aaron? My mom rarely called me by my full name. Only when something serious hovered between us. I closed my eyes. Mom, I said, I need to tell you something. And it's going to break your heart. And then I told her. I told her everything, from the first suspicion to the hospital photo, the love letters, the confession in our kitchen. There was no yelling on her end. No gasps. Just long, hollow silence. When she finally spoke, her voice was smaller than I'd ever heard it. I thought she was family. So did I. And Caleb? I don't know what to call him anymore. She sniffed. He hasn't woken up yet. But if he does, we'll talk. One last time. Then I'm done. My mom didn't argue. She didn't ask me to forgive him. She just said, when you see him, tell him he killed something. And that some things don't come back. News spreads in families like a contagion. By the weekend, I'd gotten 3 texts from cousins, 2 voicemails from Caleb's high school buddy, and an email from our youth pastor, asking if I was willing to sit down and talk like brothers. Brothers. That word didn't mean the same anymore. I deleted the email. Rachel never reached out again. No calls. No texts. No, I miss you. Not even a half-hearted, how are you? Nothing. I suppose in some ways, that was a gift. The clean severing of a cord. No lingering string of manipulation, no false hope. Just a door slammed and sealed. I thought that would make it easier. It didn't. I started therapy. It was my boss, actually, Linda, who pulled me into her office one day, closed the door, and said, "You look like a man who's lost at sea. And the tide is winning." She handed me a card. Dr. Mira Langley. Trauma counselor. Highly recommended. I didn't want to go. But I did. Dr. Langley was in her late 50s. Stern eyes. Calm voice. No nonsense. I sat in her office and told her my wife had cheated. Told her it was with my brother. Told her I'd given that brother my kidney to save his life. She didn't flinch. Didn't pity me either. She just said, "You ever consider that grief comes in layers?" I asked what she meant. "You're grieving your marriage, your sibling, your trust in the world. But there's a deeper layer. You're grieving the version of yourself that believed love made you safe." That hit harder than anything Rachel ever said. About a month after Rachel left, I got a call from Mercy General. Caleb was awake. Lucid. Weak. Asking for me. I sat in the hospital parking lot for 20 minutes, staring at the steering wheel, trying to decide if I could walk in without putting my fist through a wall. In the end, I did walk in. His room was the same machines, same view, same flowers someone forgot to throw out. Caleb looked up when I stepped in. His face thinned by weeks of IVs, eyes sunken, but alert. "Hey," he said. I stood there, arms crossed. "You asked for me?" He nodded. I wanted to explain. "You think anything you say now changes what you did?" He looked down. "No. I just didn't want to die without telling you I was sorry." I walked to the window. "You should have told me before you touched her. I didn't mean for it to happen." "God, stop saying that," I snapped. "You didn't trip and fall into my wife, Caleb. You chose it. Over and over. You both did. I know. You think knowing you're sorry does anything for me?" "No," he whispered. "Then why am I here?" He looked at me, eyes wet. "Because even after everything, you're still my brother." "No," I said. "I was. You killed that." And I left. That night, I burned the last photo I had of the 3 of us, me, Rachel, and Caleb, arms around each other at the transplant fundraiser. I watched it curl and blacken in the grill out back. Watched the smiles disappear into smoke. And I felt lighter. Not healed. Not whole. But no longer carrying them with me. It had been 79 days since I last saw her. Yes, I counted. Not out of longing, not exactly. It was more like counting aftershocks. You survived the quake, but you know the earth could shift again. And then she showed up. It was a Saturday morning, late October. I'd just come back from a hike, something my therapist had suggested. Reclaim the outdoors, she said. It's where your body can feel strong again. I was sweaty, tired, halfway through peeling a banana, when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, there she was. Rachel. In a cream-colored sweater, jeans, no makeup. Hair pulled into a low bun like she was trying to appear smaller than I remembered. She had a canvas bag over her shoulder, clutching it like a life raft. For a moment, neither of us said anything. Then she cleared her throat. I didn't know if you still lived here. Clearly I do. I didn't mean to, I'm not here to. I just need a few minutes. I should have shut the door. I didn't. I stepped aside, and she entered like she was walking into a museum of her own crimes. Her eyes scanned everything, the coat rack she'd picked out, the lamp her mom gave us, the picture frames now conspicuously empty. She sat on the edge of the couch. Perched, like she knew she didn't belong. I came to give you something, she said, reaching into her bag. I didn't move. She pulled out a manila folder. Handed it to me. Inside were court papers. Divorce. Already drafted. Signed. And a post-nuptial agreement. Voluntary. Waiving any claim to spousal support or property. My hands didn't tremble, but my jaw did tighten. I didn't want you to think I'd drag this out, she said quietly. You don't owe me anything. Not even a conversation. But I figured I owed you something clean. I sat across from her. This doesn't fix what you did. She nodded. I know. I looked her in the eyes, those same eyes I once memorized in the early hours of a Sunday morning. And now? They were gray glass. Dull. Tired. Why now? I asked. Rachel exhaled. Because I saw your brother. Last week. My stomach twisted. He asked about you, she said. Said you came to see him. That you looked like a ghost. I didn't respond. I think he hoped you'd forgive him. I scoffed. Then he's still delusional. She nodded again. I'm not here to defend him. Or myself. No, I said. You're here because guilt sticks to your skin like smoke. You want to breathe again, and you think this'll clear the air. She looked down. I stood. Walked to the window. Same view. Same neighbor's dog digging the same useless hole in their yard. I loved you, I said. More than I thought I was capable of. I gave you the best of me. And you rewired my trust. You didn't just cheat. You used my own brother to do it. You built something on top of a grave and called it love. I was broken, she whispered. No. You were selfish. She flinched like I'd slapped her. Did he ever love you? I asked. I don't know, she admitted. Sometimes I think he just wanted to feel saved. And I wanted to feel seen. We mistook those things for love. And now? She paused. Now I feel nothing. Good. She nodded, stood, and slung the bag over her shoulder. I left my ring in the envelope, she said. Figured you'd want to sell it. Or melt it down. Whatever. She moved to the door. Then stopped. I'm sorry, Nathan. That was the first time she'd said my name in almost 3 months. I didn't respond. She let herself out. And just like that, she was gone again. Later that night, I poured a whiskey, sat on the couch, and stared at the folder. I could have torn it up. Burned it. Pushed it down the garbage disposal just to hear it grind. But instead, I opened it again. Inside, tucked between the forms, was a single photo. Not one I expected. It was of me. Laughing. Sitting on a bench with Caleb beside me, from before everything, maybe 2 years before the transplant. Rachel must have taken it. There was no note. No caption. Just that image. 2 men who didn't know the bomb was ticking beneath their feet. I slid the photo out, held it for a moment, then quietly dropped it into the trash. Not in anger. In closure. 3 weeks passed. The divorce papers sat on my desk, unsigned. Not because I wanted her back, that part of me was dead and buried. But because putting my name on that line felt like putting a headstone over something I hadn't fully grieved yet. Then came the call. It was a nurse from Mercy General. "Mr. Holloway? Caleb's asked to see you." My stomach dropped. "He said it's important. He's been writing something. He wants to give it to you directly." I told myself not to go. That I didn't owe him anything. That whatever he had to say, I didn't need it. But something, maybe obligation, maybe some fossil of brotherhood, drove me back. I found Caleb propped up in bed, thinner than before. His hair was longer. His face hollow. He didn't look at me when I entered. He just held out a sealed envelope. "I wrote everything," he said. "I don't know if you'll read it. But it's yours." I didn't take it right away. "I told you," I said. "We're done." "I know," he replied, voice raspy. But I had to say it. I didn't sit. I didn't stay. I took the envelope and walked out. I didn't open it for 2 days. When I finally did, it was 17 pages long. Handwritten. Jagged. Sprawling. Like he'd bled the words out. "I'll spare you most of it. But these are the lines I remember. You always wanted to fix things. I think that's why I hated being sick, not because I was dying, but because you wouldn't stop trying to save me. You wouldn't let me be weak. I didn't fall in love with her out of spite. I didn't even mean for it to happen. But I wanted to be someone's choice for once. You were always the sun in every room. I was the shadow that followed behind. She came to see me when you were out of town. At first it was just kindness. Then it became something else. I told her it was wrong. But I didn't stop it. I want you to know I never planned to keep it going. The guilt was killing me faster than the disease. But then the surgery happened. And suddenly, you'd given me everything. Including her. You shouldn't forgive me. I wouldn't. But I need you to know that I never stopped loving you as my brother. Not even when I failed you. I finished the letter and just sat there. No tears. No rage. Just exhaustion. Like I'd run a marathon only to realize the finish line led back to the start. He was right. I had been the fixer. And maybe somewhere, deep down, I wanted credit for it. I thought giving him my kidney would bond us forever. Instead, it gave him the strength to betray me. And maybe, he thought he owed me too much to be honest after that. A week later, I called the hospital. He was gone. Heart failure. Complications from the rejection. No funeral. No memorial. He'd left instructions not to have one. The hospital said he wanted to be cremated and scattered on Long's Peak, a hike we'd done together when we were kids. I drove up there alone with the ashes. Hiked all day through biting wind and thinning air. And when I reached the spot where we carved our initials into the side of a stone with a pocket knife, I opened the urn. "Here you go, Cal," I whispered. One last time. I let him go into the wind. And I didn't look back. When I got home, I signed the divorce papers. Dropped them in the mailbox. Didn't even flinch. Closure doesn't come like a sunrise, soft, golden, poetic. It comes like cold metal. Like a locked door. Like the last shovel of dirt on a casket. Final. Quiet. Done. I haven't spoken to Rachel since. A mutual friend told me she moved to Oregon. New job. New city. Fresh start. Good for her. I don't care. I tell myself I don't care. Most days, I believe it. Some nights, I wake up to silence so loud it feels like a scream. But it passes. And I survive it. It's been 16 months. Since the day I found Caleb in that hospital bed. Since Rachel walked out for the last time. Since I watched the pieces of my old life crumble in silence. I didn't know who I was for a while. I went through the motions, wore my grief like an overcoat, heavy, shapeless, always clinging to my skin. But time is funny. It doesn't heal, exactly. It just moves. And if you're lucky, it drags you forward whether you're ready or not. Now I'm starting to live again. I moved. Not far, just across town, but far enough that the grocery store doesn't whisper her name, and the coffee shop isn't haunted by memories of her hand on mine. My new apartment is smaller. Simpler. Just 2 bedrooms, one for me, one I turned into a home office. I hung a black and white map of the Rockies over the desk. It reminds me that the world is vast, and I've only seen a sliver. I switched jobs, too. Left the freight depot, took a logistics consultant gig that lets me work from home half the week. I sleep better now. Breathe easier. No more panic when the sun sets. No more rehearsing arguments in the shower. Therapy helps. I still see Dr. Langley twice a month. I told her about Caleb's letter. About scattering the ashes. About how sometimes, I don't feel anything, not sadness, not anger. Just a blank page. She told me that's okay. Sometimes peace looks like emptiness, she said. But that space is where new things grow. I started hiking again. Alone, mostly. But sometimes with a meetup group, people who bring granola and water filters and tell you their whole life story within 15 minutes. There's this guy named Paul. Mid-50s. Divorced twice. Wears neon socks. He likes to say, if you're still standing, you're still winning. I don't know if that's true. But I keep showing up. Last month, a woman named Erin joined our group. She's an art teacher. Witty. Honest. Her eyes crinkle when she laughs, and she talks to animals on the trail like they understand her. We've gotten coffee a few times. No pressure. No expectations. Just 2 people walking forward. She doesn't know my story yet. One day I'll tell her. Not today. I still have Caleb's letter. I keep it in the bottom drawer of my desk. Not because I need to revisit it. But because it reminds me of something I finally understand. Forgiveness isn't a favor you give someone else. It's what you do when you're ready to stop bleeding. I haven't forgiven him yet. But I think I will. Eventually. As for Rachel? I don't wish her well. I don't wish her harm either. I wish her gone, from my mind, my bones, my dreams. Some nights I wake up and I almost smell her shampoo on the pillow beside me. But I don't reach for her anymore. Not even in sleep. There's a small wooden box on my bookshelf. Inside is the only thing I kept from our marriage, a photo, folded so the edges are curled and soft. It's not of Rachel. It's of me and Caleb, when we were kids. Standing knee-deep in the lake near our grandparents' cabin, holding up a fish too small to keep, grinning like idiots. Before illness. Before betrayal. Before we became versions of ourselves we didn't recognize. I kept that photo because I need to remember the boy I used to be, the one who believed in forever. The one who thought love could fix anything. He's gone now. But I think he left something behind. Hope. A stubborn little spark that refused to die, even when everything else did. I'm not who I was. I never will be again. But I'm still here. Still standing. Still walking into the quiet with open hands. And that's enough.